I'm going to have a hard time with these veins because the pictures are so small. And when I zoom in, I can't draw on the picture. I can only highlight it. This is the second time I'm trying this recording, and it's a little bit aggravating. Okay. We're doing veins in this mini lab right here. And remember from last time that the veins are going to be returning blood to the heart. And so we have the heart, and blood leaves through arteries, feeds into capillary beds where gas exchange and nutrient exchange occurs, and blood goes back to the heart through veins. The arteries are a high pressure system, and the veins are low. So as we go through this route, what is driving blood flow is the fact that we're going from a high pressure area to a low pressure area. So one way we can make sure that veins are low pressure is we can have a large lumen. If we take a cross section of an artery, it might look like that, where the vein that's right beside it will have a very large lumen to make sure that it does not reduce blood flow back to the heart. Another thing that we can do is we can have two sets of veins. We can have the deep veins deep in the body, and then we can have superficial routes and lots of variable routes on the way back to the heart. So I think that the veins are harder to learn because you have more veins to learn. You have the deep veins, which could be kind of easy if they match up with the arteries. And then you have the superficial veins that are running in the skin and that you can actually see them. So I apologize for not being able to annotate on here. I am going to get this bigger. Actually, I can draw for a second before I get down here. The superior vena cava is going to be taking all blood into the heart, specifically the right atrium. Here's the superior vena cava, anything above the diaphragm. So here is the location over here of the diaphragm. All blood that's from the arms, the chest, the head drains into the heart through the superior vena cava. The inferior vena cava drains all the blood that's coming up from the legs and the viscera and goes up into the right atrium as well. So the superior vena cava is going to split into two veins. Now you will remember the name of this from the arteries. We have the two brachiocephalic veins because they're going to come from the head and the arm. So this brachiocephalic, so here over here is our superior vena cava. I don't want to color it. I want to color these guys from here to here. These are the brachiocephalic. They're little. They're little. And then what's going to feed into the brachiocephalic, in the arteries we were going out and the veins were taking blood back in, the brachiocephalic on both sides is going to turn into the subclavian vein because that's underneath the clavicle, and then under the armpit, it's going to be just like the arteries. It's going to be the axillary. And then when it goes down in front of the humerus, it's going to be the brachial. But this time we're talking about veins and not arteries. And then just like before, it's going to split off. If you're in an anatomical position, the radial vein will be on the outside and the ulnar vein will be on the inside. These are your deep veins. It matches on both sides. Now, if we look up here, I'm going to show you where those deep veins are, but I have to enlarge it and I can only highlight it. Okay. So I've outlined up here the brachiocephalic veins feeding into the superior vena cava. But I'm going to go away from the heart because it's easier for to think the way we thought with the arteries. So this little hand right here is the superior vena cava, turning shortly into the brachiocephalic. Then it goes under the clavicle. That is the subclavian. When it goes under the armpit, it's the axillary vein. When it comes out here, I'm right in the middle. See my little hand? Little tiny hand. It's in front of that's the brachial region, so that's the brachial vein. Now it looks very shaded. Follow this hand. Here's this brachial vein. It's going to split and it's shaded because it's deep in there. I'm between these two veins right here. This is my radial vein, and then this is the ulnar vein. These other veins that are very pronounced, and those are going to be part of the superficial system. So now that I've taken it to this level, I can draw again. So we have, it will go from the superior vena cava to the short little brachiocephalic, axillary, straight down here, brachial, and then I'm drawing a line in between these guys. That's going to be the radial and the ulnar. They're called deep veins because they're deep. Superficial veins are closer to the skin surface, so you can actually see them. So let's take a look at the superficial veins of the actual arm. So here, right around the axillary region where this brachial is spouting off, we're going to have a vein that goes down the outside of the arm, completely down the outside. I like to think of it as it goes around the head of the humerus. It's on the outside, and it goes around the head of the humerus. So that is going to be your cephalic vein. Where is it written? Here it is right here. Cephalic, meaning head. Think of it, the head of the humerus. So this outer one is the closer to the head of the humerus. That's that. This inner vein is going to be a superficial vein, and it's going to be the basilic vein. And then they're going to be connected in the middle by a median cubital vein. That's where most people draw blood. Now, everybody's venous system is different. It doesn't really look like this. If you look at the veins in your arms, you're like, what the heck is going on? What is the cephalic? What is the basilic? But just think of it, if it's going along the outside and you're in anatomical position down to your thumb, and you can see it as probably a branch of that cephalic vein. And if it's going on the inside, it's a branch of the basilic. They're very hard to tell, but they do connect in the middle in the antecubital region, and that's the median cubital vein. Let's enlarge this a little bit. So if we look on this outside, right here's the brachiocephalic, then we go underneath the clavicle, so that's the subclavian. Then it goes right down the middle. It's the axillary that goes down into the brachial. If we're going out towards the thumb, that's the radial, and the inside, that's the ulnar. So if we start over at the subclavian up here, see my little hand. If we go around the head of the humerus, that's the cephalic vein going all the way down. And the basilic is going all the way on the inside. And this guy in the middle that's connecting the basilic and the cephalic, that will be the median cubital vein. Now, about the veins of the neck, those are your hands. The digital veins are in your fingers. I'm pretty sure I know you have veins in your fingers. There is a little guy right here in the middle. This is hard to tell unless you see the vertebrae. This is your vertebral vein. Okay. On this outside, very outside, coming up, and on the inside, these are our jugular veins. I'm sure you've heard the phrase before, someone has me by the jugulars. That means they've got you by the neck. You've got the carotid arteries going up to the brain and the jugular veins draining the brain. Now, what's the difference between the external jugular vein and the internal? This internal is much larger, and the external is actually on the outside of the sternocleidomastoid. So that sternocleidomastoid muscle goes from the mastoid processes behind your ears, and it comes down and attaches to the sternum and the clavicle. Sternocleidomastoid muscle. They're the muscles that cause us to turn our neck, right? When we contract. And every now and then on the side of someone's neck, you see a big, huge vein. That vein is going to be the external jugular vein because it's running on the outside of the sternocleidomastoid. So it'd be a good time to stop and Google the external jugular in position with the internal jugular. So if you want to see the internal jugular on someone, you have to cut the sternocleidomastoid and you have to pull it up, and then you can see that internal jugular vein beneath it. It runs with the carotid artery. So this external is the one you can see, and the internal you really can't see. Now, if we go up into the head region, we have the dural sinuses. I can't see because I have a lot of stuff blocking my view. There we go. These dural sinuses are where the brain, all the blood from the brain feeds into these dural sinuses, and then they feed into the jugular veins. All right. I think we've done head, neck, middle of the body. Let's go to the abdominal region. So if we're going down here, remember that the superior vena cava drains everything to the heart above the heart. This is all of this right here. This is not an aorta. It's going to run beside the aorta. It's just not pictured here. This is the inferior vena cava, and it's taking blood up to the heart. So it comes from this area here. See this middle area? I'm going to have to, we're going to pretend like all this stuff in front of the inferior vena cava is gone. And we're just going to focus on that inferior vena cava. Let's undo it. With the inferior vena cava, we're going to come like this, and we're going to have, just like the arteries, we're going to have, it's going to, we wouldn't say it splits into these because really blood flow is going in this direction, but this is the common iliac vein. So just like the artery, you know, it's going to feed off into the internal iliac veins. And then wherever the internal iliac veins are coming off the common iliac, from here down, it will be the external iliac vein. So where is the external iliac vein in comparison to the external iliac artery? Right beside each other. They're side by side. So over here, so this external iliac, just like before, now see here, the femoral is going to come up in the middle. And the femoral turns in right here, when it goes on the other side of this pubic bone, when it dives in deep, that's when the femoral becomes the external iliac. If you want to think of it as the external iliac becomes the femoral, that's fine, I don't care. So that femoral vein is a deep vein, just like our artery, just like the popliteal, the femoral artery, it's going to go behind the knee, and it's going to become the popliteal vein. And then it's going to come out in the back of the, now this is hard to see, this posterior tibial, you can barely see that it's lighter. The anterior tibial, I can't see. The anterior tibial, what you want to know about the anterior tibial, don't worry about your posterior tibial. It's very hard for me to get a picture of that. But the anterior tibial vein is in front of the tibia. And then there's going to be a vein that's lateral to it that we'll get here in a second, and one that's medial to this anterior tibial vein. But we'll get to that in a minute. We have this dorsal venous arch and our digital veins, or you can call them dorsal metatarsal veins. No worries. So this blood is going to go up, and it's going to go, say, through this anterior tibial vein, underneath the knee, which is the popliteal vein, and then it's going to continue up through the femoral vein. And when we get to this region, it goes to external iliac, to the common iliac, to the inferior vena cava, and then the blood is going to go into the heart. Okay. Those are your deep veins of the leg. And we've got some other ones. There's this big vein that goes, I hope you will look up later on, great saphenous. This is the great saphenous vein. On the outside, we have the small saphenous. But if you look up great saphenous, why am I blanking on the term? When your venous valves are corrupt and why can't I get it? Your venous valves, when they don't work and blood pools, you get varicose veins. There you go. I don't know who told me that in your head, but it's a varicose veins. You yelled it loud enough. Look up the varicose veins of the great saphenous. These are superficial veins. So if the valves, you know that in the arms and legs that we have valves, just like in the heart, but in the veins, to make sure that we have a one-way blood flow back to the heart and that it doesn't fall back down. Well, if these valves are busted in the arms or in the legs, you're going to have varicose veins, and you can really see a varicose vein of the great saphenous. So this internal, you pause and get rid of all this stuff. Okay, here we are again. Let's zoom in. Okay, so if it's in the middle, and it goes behind the knee, this is the femoral vein, the popliteal. If it goes behind the tibia, it's the posterior. If it comes out in front, it's the anterior tibial vein. Here's this venous arch. Now on this side, we have a superficial vein. This is the great saphenous, and it goes all the way up, and it merges with that femoral vein. And then on the lateral side, we have the small saphenous vein that's going to come up and feed in earlier. So we have the small saphenous. I'm just trying to see if I got everything. I did. Those are almost all of the veins. Now, if we go back to the abdomen, what I want you to notice is, remember that blood flow is flowing from the body back to the heart. And so if we have veins coming into this inferior vena cava right here in the liver, it's going to enter the inferior vena cava and go up to the heart. So these veins that are inside the liver at the very top are called your hepatic veins. And we're going to see an up close version of these soon enough. If we've got a vein that feeds in to the liver, it's a weird system, a portal system, and I lectured on it, then that is the hepatic, not just hepatic vein. Hepatic veins drain the liver. The hepatic portal vein is a vein that is a portal, a doorway to the hepatist, to the liver. And so that hepatic portal vein is taking blood into the liver. It's going to be processed, and then it leaves the liver via the hepatic veins. Now, this hepatic portal is a combination of a variety of veins, but this guy right here that I'm coming up, this is a superior mesenteric vein. The inferior mesenteric vein is more left. And then we have the splenic vein. All of these guys, and there's some gastric veins that aren't pictured here, but all of these guys are taking blood from the guts. And instead of sending the nutrient-rich, low oxygen, high carbon dioxide blood straight back to the heart, what we do here is we want the liver to process it. The liver can get rid of toxins. It can store glucose as glycogen. It has a lot of metabolic roles. And so any of the blood that's coming from the digestive viscera, what we want is the blood, before it goes to the heart, to be put into the liver so it can be processed. And then once it's processed, it comes out the other end cleaner. The only other vein I haven't mentioned so far here we have the kidney. So we have the vein that's draining the kidney is the renal vein. The renal arteries take blood to the kidneys, the renal veins drain. Let's look at some up close pictures. Okay, what do we have to know on this picture? This is just like before. You only have to know the pictures, the veins that are listed on the last one. And so if you see veins that aren't listed on the last one, you don't have to know it. So this is just a really great image showing you. Here is the superior vena cava coming up. See my hand down here at the bottom? You can barely see the brachiocephalic, but now we've got the subclavian going this way and it will continue on. But this big guy right here that's going to dive deep, this is your internal jugular vein. It actually comes out this way. And then out here is the external jugular vein, and it will be on the outside of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. What's in between them is the vertebral vein, and it's going up through those transverse processes of the cervical vertebrae. It's coming down. I always do it in reverse. So like the facial vein, the ophthalmic vein, the superficial temporal, you don't have to know those. You only have to know the ones on the last page. But this is a great picture showing you that vertebral vein, how it's draining from the dural sinuses up here. Actually, the dural sinuses are going into the jugulars, but it's going to drain coming down this way, feed into the brachiocephalic, going to the superior vena cava, and down to the heart. If we look up here, this is a great view of the superior sagittal sinus. You don't have to know that term. It is a dural sinus. All of these veins are considered dural sinuses because they're quick and dirty veins made by the dura mater. When the dura mater separates, it is a very tough, quick and dirty vein. And those are the sinuses, or you can call them the dural sinuses because they're made from the dura mater, and they're all going to drain right into those jugular veins. Whoa. Slow down. Okay, looking up close here. No, we do want to zoom in. Okay. When we look up close here, this is a very good view down here. I'm right here. See my hand? That's the inferior vena cava. I can't write when I'm expanded. I'm not having you know any of the hemiazygos veins or the azygos. You don't have to worry about that. The heart would be in this region. So this very small region up here is the superior vena cava. And the two V's that are coming into it, those are your brachiocephalic veins. And then this is what the clavicle would be. So it's the left subclavian. Here's the right subclavian. Going right down the middle, we have the brachial vein. Over here, following my hand down at the bottom, that is the radial. And over here in between those guys, in that little shadow vein, that is your ulnar vein. The superficial veins go from this axillary region, and for the subclavical region, here's the the cephalic vein, because it's going around the head of the humerus. And then on the inside, which is superficial, we have the basilic vein coming down. And then connecting them in the middle is the median cubital vein. And this is a lot of times where people draw blood from. Okay, so see up here how you have the external jugular and the internal jugular. The internal jugular is going to be bigger. I mean, and I know it's internal, it's more medial than the external, but it's hard to tell without the sternocleidomastoid muscle there. Okay. Let's get to this slide. This is so important. This is so very important, because this comes up and you have to know these veins for the digestive system. Now in this first, I didn't show you the gonadals. Here are the renal veins up here coming into the inferior vena cava, and then blood would be going up. Circle these guys on your notes. They're important. These guys are the hepatic veins. In this picture, we're not showing any of the veins of the hepatic portal system. We're just showing the inferior vena cava and what drains directly into the inferior vena cava. When we get to the hepatic portal system in the next picture, we're going to be draining into the liver, from the guts to the liver. It's a very strange situation. Okay, so let's do this. Let's start here at the external, at the very bottom, external iliac vein. On the inside's the internal iliac vein, and then they make the common iliac vein. And then we're inferior vena cava all the way up to the heart. If we're draining the liver, we're coming into these hepatic veins. If we're draining the kidneys, we're going through the renal veins into the inferior vena cava. If you had to take a guess, I hope you would call these the adrenal. I know it says suprarenal, same thing. These are the adrenal veins, but you don't have to know those because those aren't in the first picture. Now, what about the gonadal veins? Remember how in the aorta, you could see 3 branches coming off straight at you: celiac trunk, superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery, when we're talking about the arteries. And then off the side, we had these catfish-like whiskers called the gonadal arteries, and they were either going to go to the ovaries or to the testes, depending on, what someone has. Now, when it comes to the veins, it's very interesting. We have the right gonadal vein. See it coming in here? So this might be draining the right ovary. The left gonadal vein is not symmetrical because of the way it develops the embryology of the situation. Let's just say it that way. Here is the left gonadal vein right here. It goes right into the left renal artery. So this is the only not symmetrical thing in this picture here. These lumbar veins, you don't have to know. Okay, let's go down. This is so important. Clinically, it can't get any more important than these veins right here. When it comes to anybody, when we don't want to damage our liver, we just don't want to do that. We don't want hepatitis, we don't want cirrhosis, etc., because of this system. So these veins right here, this is a superior mesenteric vein. My hand's going up it right here. Here's the inferior mesenteric vein coming up, just lateral to it. And then we have the splenic vein, and all these gastric veins. You don't have to know any of your gastric veins. They're all feeding into this guy right here, which is feeding into the liver. We've got nutrient-rich blood from your guts going up into the liver. And how does the blood get there? For the liver to process it through this hepatic portal vein. So the hepatic portal vein goes into the liver, and then it's processed. All the blood is processed in capillaries and capillary beds, so it's microscopic. You can't see it in this picture. But then the blood is going to drain out through the hepatic veins into the inferior vena cava, into the right atrium. Okay, and in shadow in the very back, you can see the inferior vena cava back there, back in the back, behind the superior mesenteric, behind the stomach, behind the pancreas, because this right here would be the common iliac. Down here, by this time, it would become the external iliac. Okay, let's see. I bet we have the legs left. Nope, we're done. Okay, we're done with the veins. I hope you learned something and I hope you could see everything. I would practice. But it makes sense. The blood flow through the body, it does make sense, but you have to get used to it. Okay, have a great day.